The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Happy February 1st. This is the Brandon Peters Show, and today we'll be discussing the 2007 film Persepolis. And joining me, making her return to the show, you can currently find her brilliance in The Hollywood Reporter, but she's been a presence at Culture S and E! News, the dark goddess of the underworld, Sharareh Drury.
What up?
What up? Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, and you helped me. It's actually longer than people might think since you've been on, because you helped me launch the show. So you recorded well before the show even came out, and I appreciate that. So, and you and I think we first recorded. When was that? When on my old show, I can't remember.
It's been. You know what? I don't know time anymore in the pandemic.
I don't either.
I don't know if it was a week ago or like a century ago. I know it was a good minute ago, but I also remember how much fun I had, which is why I was down to come back.
There you go. And you know what's funny is, like, I can't tell you what the year was, but I'll tell you this. I when I was writing the script for the show, it hit my memory. I remember I reached out to you to be on the show. And then you responded back that you wanted to come on, and I think something. And that day of whatever year it was the day, the eve of whatever year's Thanksgiving that was. I remember it. I don't know how. I don't know.
I was just going to say, I felt like it was like right about holiday.
Because you talked about Dolly Parton's Smoky Mountain Christmas.
Yes.
But when we were planning it, like, and then you said, "Yeah, I'm down to do that." I for some reason I remember that.
Okay.
I don't know.
That
I
makes
don't know
sense.
why. I remember odd things.
It could be in the year 1850, but I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go. That's where it was at.
Yep. I had to stop the horses to drink water, and we got it. And yeah, because I found you. I discovered you myself researching for another guest on that old show. And you were interviewing them and got me information I needed for my show. And I was like, I really like her. I'm going to put her down on my list to have on my show sometime if she would. And you did.
That was such a smart choice.
It was a good choice. It was a good choice. And I've had you on. I've recorded with you as a third time, I think. And that other person I've meant to have on again, I still haven't recorded with again. So
right.
Yep. But she led me to you. So here we are.
Hey.
And you yourself, you have a pretty varied career here. I mean, well, building stuff, journalism, and you go back. Your fame goes back to like high school.
Yes.
Stuff with your start of your journalism excellence.
That's you want me to chit chat about that a little bit, like give people a little time warp back to me.
Let's time warp, because you have a great story about this stuff. So
thank you. So I mean, so for high school, while most kids were, I don't know, doing high school things like having like drama with their boyfriends or girlfriends or like not going to economics class, I was where I went to high school is Germantown High School. It's right outside of Memphis. It's outside of Memphis in the city of Germantown, and it is a really prominent high school in terms of like theater and television, like fine arts, all that kind of stuff. And I was a part of their I was a part of all of it. We coined it, we called it production, but like basically it was theater and television. I really got into the television side of things because I got the vibe that I was not going to be like a theater star. And I was like, okay, I really like TV. I was such a nerd. I loved editing and playing on, back then I was like on Avid and stuff, and like early
Lucky.
Final Cut Pro.
I had Video Toaster. Do you know what that is?
No. Should I be glad that I don't know what it is? I just remember like I was only whatever the first version of Final Cut was in some kind of avid news cutter program, but I just loved it. I was like so excited to work in TV. But anyways, to get to like the big thing was that I worked on a documentary my senior year of high school that was about September 11th, the attacks on the World Trade Center, specifically the World Trade Center specifically, not the other various things that happened on that like horrific day. And the big reason I focus on the World Trade Center is because my father actually was in the World Trade Center and got out and survived, along with all of his colleagues that were there that day for the National Association of Business and Economics conference. That's there. It's called NABE, or was NABE in Auburn, was like a conference there. But anyways, I did a documentary about it. I interviewed all of these people that had survived that day. At the time, honestly, I did not think I was going to do a documentary that was going to be for anybody or anyone. It was honestly a processing thing, like for my father and I, and like kind of like for our family, but like definitely for my father and I, because he was there. It was a traumatic experience, and he knew how much I cared about reporting and news and journalism, and he thought it would be something really fascinating to do. And then when I let people at my high school know that I was doing it, they're like, you should submit this for essentially what there are Emmys for a lot of different things, but there are Emmys that you can get in high school, you can get in college. I didn't know that at the time. I had no clue that like those were things that you could do. So I submitted myself and I won a national Emmy. It's my only Emmy, but I won it in high school, so humble brag. But like I got an Emmy for the documentary, for the writing of it, which I'm like, I mean, I don't even know how to express like how proud that both made me and how proud it made my father. And we got to go to New York to accept the award. But yeah, that was kind of like the baby steps into what is now my journalism career, essentially. So yeah.
Well, it's a kick-ass start.
I know it was an intense start, but it was a start, and it definitely sparked. And it's interesting because I'm less into hard news specifically now. Like I'm primarily an entertainment journalist, but I don't know, there were a lot of skills that I gained from that program. So shout out to GHS TV and like all of the amazing teachers there. A lot of them are still there, and even people that I either went to school with or were there right before me are now teachers there themselves. But it's an incredible program. So like, I don't know, if you want your kid to be amazing and you happen to be in the Mid-South, that's a school to go to.
I checked out the website. It's crazy. Like
it's
I'm
insane.
like, wow.
Like if you look up GHS TV and then their theater program, the Poplar Pike Playhouse, it's incredible what they do and are still doing. So yeah.
I went to Ball State University, like one of the premier telecommunications schools in the United States, and I don't remember. I didn't have a website program like that. I know they're big journalism and stuff over there, but I was like, damn, this goes beyond.
I know they really, but also, and they definitely, for good reason, they hype it up. But it's like I was real, and I think I don't know, I lucked out going there because I could have gone to. There are a few different high schools I'm sure I could have gone to, but that just happened to be the one that I ended up at, and I'm really lucky for a lot of what they taught me because that school is what made me want to be a journalist, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And where you went to college, was it as intense as the high school program, or was it a cakewalk?
You know, it was like a mini bakery walk because that high school experience was very intense. If anyone ends up ever listening to this who knows anything about that program or is from that high school, they know that it was not your typical high school experience. So I went to college at USC Annenberg, which is it's a very esteemed program. It's an incredible place to go to be a journalist. But I think I was definitely like, I remember my first like intro journalism classes there, you had people who had like, never touched a camera, never worked a tripod, like didn't really know like how to conduct themselves in an interview. And that's not like necessarily like, I'm not saying like that's bad. Like that's the whole point of going to college and learning these things. I'm just very glad that I was like already like, I know what to do. I wasn't nervous about those things and I was really excited to do them. So if anything, it just like made me more prepared for like how tough the world of journalism can be, honestly. But yeah, I mean, Annenberg definitely had its own like challenges. Like it's a very tough school. I mean, you are literally with I was very intimidated still. I just remember being there and being like, I thought I was a shit. And then I get to Annenberg and I'm like, I'm with, my father, who's Irish and is whole and very blunt with the way he jokes, he was just like, you think you're the shit and you're going to go to a school with every other person who thought they were the shit at their whatever school.
Yeah.
And you're all going to be competing against each other. But I will say this though, like as much as he said that and I was intimidated, I made a lot of incredible lifelong friends from that program, a lot of people that have helped me in my career afterwards. And I do what I can to help them too. And that also is a program that I can't speak highly enough of because it's, I don't know. I mean, it's also in Los Angeles, which of like cities that you want to be in to like work in media, that's a pretty important one.
Yeah.
Like either that, like to me, it was like, I was really honestly considering going there, somewhere in New York or Northwestern. Those were like my big, like dream schools. But USC specifically was like my number one. So I remember when I got the acceptance, I like ran through my like high school halls screaming. No one from my high school like knew what USC was.
Wow.
I mean, like a few, like maybe some of my teachers did, like, were aware of these things, but like when I'd say USC, because I grew up in Tennessee, people would be like, "Oh, like South Carolina." I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not going there." But I understand. I mean, like I knew what it was because it was my dream school, but like I just think some people didn't know. But anyways, I don't know. I was very stoked to get in, and it's a hard school to get into. So I'm very glad that I like made the cut, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I lived out there, like I felt left out in many conversations of people that all went to USC. I'm like, I did not go to USC.
It's its own like community. I will say like, it's interesting though, because like I when I moved to LA, I mean, I moved from like Tennessee, was very like humble and chill and stuff. And I will say this, there's definitely, I mean, because I'm sure people who listen to this, like USC definitely gets a reputation and a hype sometimes for like, I mean, there are a lot of privileged kids that go there. You do a lot of spoiled kids that go there. Like there's totally things like that happen. But I think what was awesome was like I found a great community of kids who were kind of like me. Like we all kind of came from different places. A lot of us were not from California, and we were just kind of soaking in the fact that like we made it in there. But and it was
it happened. Like I had a Midwestern group of friends. Like I had a couple of groups from Indiana, Tennessee. Like it was weird how we found each other. Like we didn't find each other. We just happened. Oh, what you? We just kind of.
No, that's honestly what happens. Is like I think like I honestly a lot of the times felt like such like an outsider because I wasn't from California, and USC does have a large amount of kids that are like either from California or specifically like LA or Southern California.
Yeah.
So that could be intimidating, but I don't know. I was just excited. The whole time I was there, my 4 years there, I was like, I'm here to soak in all of the experience. And something that I also think I'm very appreciative of that has helped me so much in my career too, I think, and just as a person, is it was a very diverse campus. And I mean, I'm biracial myself. I'm half Iranian and I'm half like Irish American on my dad's side. So like I get a bit of that, but like I grew up in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I didn't have like, there wasn't a ton of variety and diversity happening. So like when I got to go to LA and be a part of Annenberg, I was like, oh, it's the world in a city. It's incredible. Yeah. So I'm very, very appreciative of that experience for sure.
Definitely. And then right after there, you landed a job at E News, and that's pretty significant.
That was you know, what's actually honestly wild is that I got that. So that was it started out basically through an internship. And the reason I got the internship was so many of these things are like, I look back and I'm like, these were such like strokes of luck. Right before I had the internship, I had an internship at this place called the Los Angeles Business Journal. I was interning there, and the Los Angeles Business Journal's office was in the same, I'm going to say like what unit of buildings as where E was. It was like on one side and E was on the other side of these
campus
buildings. It's like, I guess it's like campus. It's like it's like in mid Wilshire area for people who are, it's like right by like the La Brea tar pits and stuff. And so there was the Los Angeles Business Journal was on one side and E was the other. And like every day when I'd come in for my internship at the Business Journal, I'd go across the street, go get like a coffee, and I'd see like E over there. And I was like, ooh, what's that? And like, I, I felt bad. Like, I was honest, like when I said this in my interview for E, I was like, I did not like watch it a lot like growing up. I was not like obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I knew what it was and I was aware of it, but entertainment journalism hadn't really crossed my mind in terms of like something that I thought I was going to do.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it was because I was so like, oh, I'm gonna go work for CNN and like be Christiane Amanpour. Like that was like what I thought I was gonna do. But when I was applying for internships my senior year of college, I mean, I applied everywhere. Like I applied to like the places that I probably would not have worked at, like medical blogs and things like
Oh.
like random things. I was like, I just need an internship because I essentially needed like an internship credit.
They
It's
want
like,
me, they can have me.
I like, yeah, exactly. I was like, I just need to get an internship somewhere, preferably one that pays, but just try and get something. And I got an interview with E Online, and I remember I actually think one of the reasons they did like me was because I wasn't sitting here like, I want to meet Ryan Seacrest. Like I was just like, I wanted a varied experience in journalism because I was like, I've worked for a business journal. I had worked at CanBC as an intern, like just doing local news. Like I wanted to see what all the different options and fields were before I like really settled on what am I going to do out of college. And I hadn't really thought about entertainment specifically. I had been leaning for a long time into maybe in college, like doing human interest stories or documentaries or like feature pieces, but like not entertainment or pop culture. E changed all of that for me. When I worked for E Online, I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that I could like cover. And I don't know why it took me this long to figure this out. I was like, I love pop culture. I love film, video games, television, comics, like everything. And you can do that as a job. You can cover this stuff, like talk about it and get paid. I was like, what? I did not realize that was like an opportunity. And so when I took that internship, it blew me away. I met a lot of incredibly talented people. I also remember being told that to kind of give like a little bit of story, like there was like one of the days all of the interns were rounded up into a room. We were like kind of getting introduced to one another, and we were all being asked a question of like, basically, who is it that you'd want to be? Like as a journalist, like who is it that you aspire to be? Like, and every single person in the room was like Ryan Seacrest, Julian Rancic, Ryan Seacrest, Julian Rancic, because we're at E. And they got to me and I still was like, Christiane Amanpour. I was like, that's who I want to be. Or I was like, or just like me. Like, I want people to know my name one day. Like, wouldn't that be awesome? And I remember later being told like they were appreciative that like I wasn't. And again, no shade if you wanted to be Ryan Seacrest. I mean, he's had an amazing career, but I think it was kind of just like, hey, like you're a little different. You're like a little quirky. We like that. And I think that's kind of what helped me eventually get my job there, because I interned for a semester. I graduated in May of 2011, and I just hustled every single week trying to get a job. Everybody who's done the hustle knows, like, I mean, I was sending out resumes until like my fingers bled on my computer. I was like, I'm just trying to get a job somewhere. I was doing freelancing. I ended up actually freelancing for a dentist's office, working on their website. So I did some of the medical stuff. Like I just did a lot of random jobs. And then, but with E, what I did was the person who oversaw my internship, I emailed that person every single week. Every single week. And I just said, is there a job? Is there a job? Is there a job? And every single week, this person was like, no, like, I don't have anything for you. But a few months after that pushing, they were like, you know what? We just had something open at the news desk. Like, why don't you come on in for an interview? I've let them know that I think that you might be a good fit. And I got that job, I think, within a week of applying for it. Because I think someone else had just left the news desk. And essentially at E, I worked at the news desk for, I think it was like 6 months. It's crazy looking back. I'm like, I feel old. Like trying to think back. I worked at the news desk covering breaking news, like everything from like did someone get arrested or get like a TUI, or like did someone die, like when you get an obituary ready, to like bigger feature stories. And then during my last year or so there, I remember working at the desk and thinking, I want to do something more than just cover like the random breaking news stuff, because you weren't
Right.
also really covering it yourself. You were gathering all the information for other reporters to put together for a story. And what ended up happening was Melanie Bromley, who is now their, I believe she's like their senior news correspondent there. She was coming over from Us Weekly because she ran Us Weekly for, I think initially it was in the UK, and then she was the editor in chief for it in the US.
Okay.
And she came to E to be their senior correspondent. And I remember watching her cover like the Olympics, and how she found ways to like cover pop culture in the Olympics. And I was like, she's such a creative person to figure this out. And I was like, I want to work for this person. So I literally went to her office, asked if I could have a meeting with her. And I was like, I want to work for you. I don't know how, don't know what, because I technically work over here at the desk and I don't know if I'm even allowed to be doing this, but let me work for you somehow, some way. And she was like, okay, I need an assistant. So basically you're going to be like my production assistant,
Right.
but when you want to work on stories, I'll let you work on them. And that was like my last year there, was working with her and doing a lot of things I did before, but getting opportunities where I could to cover bigger things and get exclusive in that, I guess, that kind of a reporter life. And she was, I don't know how else to say this. Like, she was intense. She was a very like no funny business boss, but at the same time, I really appreciate everything that I learned from her, because she also kind of like the way that my high school was like such a wild and like unique an experience. Working with someone like her also helped me. I think, what's the way to say it? Like, I developed a thicker skin because of her.
Okay.
And I think that's like very important to have in this industry, because you're
Right.
going to get told, I mean, whether you're covering it, like trying to act, like even now people who are trying to like, you know, be on social, do podcasts, like any of these kinds of things, it's a lot of no's, and it's a lot of failure, and it's a lot of challenges. But I'm really glad that I got to work with her, because she was really no nonsense and just helped me develop, like those abilities that you need to succeed, I guess.
Right.
And really just succeed in Hollywood. And I'm appreciative of that too.
Right. Exactly. And we were just talking earlier, like you got to have that, because now with the thick skin, tell me no and I can move on. Thank you. Yes. I can
Right,
take a
exactly.
no. Just tell me the no. Your ghosting stuff, that's a whole nother thing I need to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah, but from there you jump over to Culture S, and that's where I knew you from originally.
Yes.
But you had like a dry spell ish, or just kind of a floaty period
Yeah,
between.
so essentially from E, so I went from like that incredible like experience to moving from LA and moving to Chicago. And essentially what happened was is I fell in love. And as people who fall in love do, I was very crazy about this person that is now my husband. So it all worked out. It was all great. But essentially what happened was is that my then boyfriend, who became a fiance when we moved to Chicago, he got into medical school.
Okay.
And he was like, I got to go to Chicago for medical school. And I thought about it, and I was like, I've lived in Tennessee my whole life, came to LA, got this experience. I had never really taken a big risk though, in terms of like just changing things or moving to a new city on my own. Cause like going to LA was like, I was going there for college and I had my like parents' support to do that.
Right. It was like a little safety blanket.
Exactly. So when he was like, I'm going to move to Chicago, I was just kind of at a point in my life where I was like, I wouldn't mind taking a risk. I wouldn't mind seeing what another market has to offer. And if I'm being honest though, too, I think as much as I did love working at E, I was starting to experience a bit of burnout, because I do think, especially like, I don't know, I've heard this from a lot of millennials, especially this is something I think I should be honest about. Like, working in this industry, you can have such high highs, but also go through such low lows. And there were elements of work that, as much as I was developing that thicker skin, there were some things that I hadn't really like fully grasped how to handle. Like, there's a lot of stress that comes with covering entertainment in LA. There can be, at the time that I was working there right out of college, this is like 2011, 2012, 2013. I mean, I think to put it blunt, I was getting a vibe that like I wasn't going to be super successful for different things that I like uh being Middle Eastern, like the way that my name was, that like the kind of aspirations I had for myself. I was getting a lot of judgment that like it just wasn't going to happen for me. Like someone like me would not be a successful journalist in this field. And there was also just general burnout. Like I don't know how else to describe it. Like you just get tired from jobs sometimes and you need a break, and we kind of need to respect that. So what happened was is when my boyfriend was going to move to Chicago for med school, I thought, let me take a risk. Let me move to a
Mhm.
whole new city. Let me see what Chicago has to offer in terms of media, in terms of reporting, or maybe I want to do something else. Like I was honestly, it was like my early to mid 20s, and I was like, when am I going to get an opportunity to make that kind of a change and kind of see what
Yeah.
happens? And that's essentially what I did, and I moved to Chicago. I ended up actually getting a job fairly quickly at a women's lifestyle website that doesn't exist anymore. So
Oh,
I don't even know if it's like worth like it's I was there for a couple of years and that was a great experience, but like it's not even like operational anymore. But essentially after working there for a bit, I got into copywriting for a while. I worked in like social media marketing for a while. And a big part of that too is like I was like the sole like financial supporting person in my relationship because my husband wasn't, or because now fiance then husband was in medical school. So like someone had to pay bills essentially. So like I was like, well, I'm a freelancer isn't going to make a lot of money, so
right.
I I probably should try to like do something that'll make money. So copywriting pays very well.
Hmm.
So I became a copywriter. But during that time I freelanced. I got to freelance for Hello Giggles
Oh,
for a while, which was super fun. So and that was just, pretty chill lifestyle coverage, like pop culture, things like fashion, like viral videos, like it was just a mix of things. So that was kind of my way to get my creative outlet, but still have a job that paid and like got them bills paid. And then I think it was actually a few years before we moved. So this would be like maybe 2017, 2018, I think, was when I saw the posting for an editor-in-chief role at this site called Culturess. And when I looked it up, basically I can explain it. It was like a nerdy pop culture site for women. And I was like, this is what I love. Because I will say this,
right.
like as much as I loved working there and covering entertainment, it was very geared towards like celebrity news and like celebrity
Yeah.
gossip, things like that. And that's not like my interest in when it comes to entertainment. I like covering basically, yeah, in the nerdier end of things. Like I want to cover Star Wars, I want to cover comics, I want to cover gaming, or like, Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead. Like those are things that I'm into. I was never going to cover that at E. And so when I saw this
Right.
opportunity here at Culture, so I was like, or even like a Hello Giggles, I wasn't doing it as much. So when I saw this opportunity at Culturist, just everything, the planets aligned. I was like, this is everything that I want to cover.
All the things.
Yeah, and I applied to that and nabbed that job. I remember crying so much of happiness because I don't think it really hit me until I applied how much I missed entertainment journalism. And I was very glad that I found that and got to be a part of that community for a while and working there. And the reason I bring up I think it's important to talk about the copywriting thing is because I, at the time when I was a copywriter, remember feeling like a bit of a failure. Like, oh, I went to USC Annenberg for journalism, and like, oh, I worked at E News and I did all of these incredible things there. And now I'm a copywriter. And I shouldn't have done that because there's no shame in like doing any of these things. And it's totally fine to take risks, and some things work out and some things don't. And everyone's journey is different. And I also share it because I've like recently like been on Twitter and seen like people who want to like make shifts in their career or do get burned out from like their job in media or news and like want to bounce for a bit. It's all fine. And it
Right.
definitely works out because for me, like I got a job at Culturist, and that job at Culturist eventually helped me get the job that I have now, which is an associate editor at the Hollywood Reporter. Like all of those things worked out the way they did, I think, to get me to where I am. And I think a lot of it is just kind of being okay with the process and
Mhm.
being okay with some things not working out. Because I think eventually, if you're passionate enough and you work at something hard and long enough, like you'll get to where you want to be. And like I am now at an amazing job or at an amazing outlet and I have an amazing job. But I think I probably wouldn't have gotten it if it weren't for all of these things that had happened before.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes you have to, in life, you get to a point where you have to sort of surrender to certain processes. You're like, all right,
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
I I'm not above it, or you'll understand, oh, that's why that is a
Right.
process. So it's very
For
good.
sure.
And you're doing good work over there at the Hollywood Reporter. It's
Yeah.
definitely good stuff.
It's super fun. I love working there.
I mean, I've seen like you recently had a piece with was it the director of Sound of Metal? Uh,
Yes.
One of
It
my
was
favorite films of last year.
oh my god, it's such first off, such a good movie.
It is. It's really good.
Everyone really needs to go see it. Riz Ahmed is not only, I mean, who doesn't want to look at Riz Ahmed? Sorry, but also he's an amazing actor. This film, I think, is such a unique film that explores. I mean, yes, well, I mean, for obviously for those like who know what it's about. I mean, I'm like probably repeating
We've
like.
talked about it on this show a couple
Oh,
times. It's
okay,
that
good.
good. It's
So
that good. So if my listeners haven't watched it by now, shame on you.
shame on y'all.
Shame.
No, please go watch it.
Yes.
Please support Mr.
It's
Riz.
on Amazon Prime. Come on.
Exactly. It's an incredible movie, but I think I mean, my time at THR, maybe kind of like to touch on like why I would want to cover a film like that is like I a big aspect of my career at this point is I really want to spotlight and highlight unique storytelling, impactful storytelling, but also because I'm half Iranian myself, if there are films that have a diverse cast or like are putting people of color at the forefront, whether it's like they are on the screen or they're like behind the scenes, like in some form, like directing or screenwriting, things like that, that's become more and more important to me to make sure that I spotlight that. So that's been a big goal of mine at THR, and I've gotten to do a lot of really fun and impactful interviews, and hope to continue doing that as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, you're very outspoken. And you're a good Twitter follow. I would say.
Thank you.
I think as
I
well.
hope
Then
y'all enjoy
social media.
Yes.
No, I mean, I think you kind of wear your heart on your sleeve a bit, but you provide good like perspective, experience, and stuff like that helps a guy like me who might have overlooked something that could be like problematic or something like that, and you lay it out there for an understanding because I'm always looking for better ways of
Right.
understanding, finding empathy where I'm in entertainment where I'm not, or I might have like something might have just went by me, but it impacts you or something like that, and you tend to point those out with frequency, and it's kind of a good
Thank
learning experience. And
you know, it's funny because like there was a time where I was like so shy on social media, like when I was in college or out. I mean, there was a period where I didn't even really use Twitter at all. And I think it's because like a lot of people, even today, you get
Mhm.
worried like, oh God, should I say that? Like everyone's gonna see this tweet. I sometimes do like take a minute before I tweet something. I'm like, do I want this to be up like a week from now? But I'm also, what you said, I think is accurate. I'm a very like, I say what am feeling. I
Mhm.
am what is it? I'm a verbal processor.
There you go.
I process things very loudly and verbally. And that's how I like just kind of get through life. And anyone who knows me knows it about me. But I also think that's just, maybe it's also admittedly for myself and my career. And I'm seeing a lot of this with a lot of people right now, but definitely in the BIPOC community and women of color, we're just kind of like, fuck it. Like say what we think,
Do it.
say what we're feeling. If something is problematic or we ain't feeling it, talk about it, express it. Because like you said, you never know who's following you. And you
Mhm.
never know like what your words. I mean, I do try to also consider that as well, the impact of words. And like if someone's ever I would never want to hurt anyone or make anyone feel lesser than with my tweets. So like I definitely consider that. But for the most part, a lot of my stuff is calling out things that I think there is an issue or there's something problematic. Or the other side of it, hey, no one knows about this film and y'all should know about
There
it.
you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like maybe you haven't heard of this project. Like one of my favorite interviews I did last year was about the Iranian romantic comedy, A Simple Wedding. And it's an amazing movie, but like I wasn't sure like who's gonna know about this movie unless like you're Iranian and like you're looking for it. And especially in terms of like trade coverage, I was like, this would be a really great thing to discuss. So that's hopefully what my followers are finding on my social media, is those kinds of stories.
And that's the great power of like the film writer, things like that people understand. They focus far too much on like what they have to say about Star Wars or Marvel. It's like you don't need them to tell you to go see that movie. You're going. They didn't like it. Big
Star
deal.
Wars is going to be just fine.
But yeah, the spotlight on this. What is this? And even if, let's say, like you write a piece about that, and it's not quite there right then, but someone's always going to be looking at it, and you have a documented piece of history on that's there.
Absolutely,
I think that's absolutely important, and it has a place for someone looking for more about that film to find it, regardless if it's 8 people or 2 million. That's important to hit. And and
I don't have Chrissy Teigen's following, but one day
one day
we'll
get there. So Persepolis is written and directed by Marjan Satrapi along with Vincent Perignon.
See, if it's French, I'm definitely not gonna.
And it's based on her comic of the same name. It stars Chiara Mastroianni, Danielle Deroux, Catherine Deneuve, and Simon Abkarian. Got him.
We got him. Trust. I know the names can be hard. Trust me. Even being Iranian, I'm like. Also French too, so it's tough.
At the end of Cult Cinema Cavalcade, we did a run of Godzilla movies. We did 14 in a row, and I should be put in jail for pronunciation crimes. As bad. Even if I studied them up before that, when it got to like being on the mic, failure.
Okay.
If you watch this movie in English, the redub, you'll hear Sean Penn and Gina Rowlands replacing the roles of father and grandmother. Persepolis tells the tale of a precocious and outspoken Iranian girl who grows up during the Islamic Revolution. And as always, Sharareh, I want to know what made you pick Persepolis to bring to the show? Because it's a big honor to be like, oh, I got to come on the show and pick a movie. So what made you bring Persepolis? Which is an excellent pick, by the way.
Thank you.
Pick.
I'm so glad that you think so. I honestly, I think a big reason why I picked this for this oh my gosh, I can't talk. I lost my train of thought.
You have my sympathy. You heard me pronouncing names that I researched and had like phonetics to try.
Actually, I'm gonna help you with one though. This is one little help. It's Iran, not
Iran.
Iranian.
Oh, okay. Iran.
It's
Iran.
like I know it. Trust me.
Iran.
I said Iran because I was from Memphis, Memphis, Tennessee, but Iranian, like kind of like that.
I had to chat like yeah, Iran. I had to. Gosh, it was I had to change from Budapest to Budapest because that's.
I didn't know that.
Budapest.
See, learning. We're learning.
And I knew Iran was Iran. And I still say Iran sometimes, and Iran.
Iran. You know, it's interesting because I know like even like what is it, like Obama was like probably the first president I ever heard, but like he mixes it, but it's totally fine. But I just wanted to put it out there. Okay, wait. So maybe let's start over. What was the question? Why did I choose this film?
Why did you choose Persepolis?
Okay.
For the podcast, that was yeah.
Sure. The reason I chose Persepolis, I think it's kind of like a two-parter. One, for me personally, when I actually read the comics first, and then I saw the film like years after I first read the comics. But both of those mediums, I guess, were so impactful for me because I'm Iranian myself, and my mother and pretty much all of her siblings and her came to this country right before the revolution. I think, you know, I don't know the exact years, but my mother was born in 59 and she came to the US, I think when she was like 14 or 15.
I think my mom was born in 59 too.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So
58 or 59. I can't remember, one of those two.
So yeah, so she was right before the 60s. She was like 14 or 15 when she came here. But her parents stayed behind in Iran, and she's always told me about just all of this, like all the hardships of like having to leave her country, for her coming to the US and just kind of like being a part of two worlds and that duality of identity. And I think a lot of that is explored in this film, which I really appreciate. And I think is actually a pretty universal issue for a lot, even especially today, with the fact that we have so many people who are mixed, who are a part of blending cultures right now. But no, I think essentially like the reason I chose this was because it offered a gateway for me. This movie offered a gateway for me to understand what my mother and her family went through. So that's the number one reason. I'd say the second reason is because knowing that I'd have even a platform like this to talk about, to choose anything. First and foremost, I'm going to try and suggest films that are going to broaden people's horizons, like open their minds a bit. And it was either this or a few other Iranian films that I love personally and I think are really fascinating to watch. But this one's probably the top, because to this day, I still think there's so many people who look at I prefer using the term West Asia now versus like the Middle East, but looking at that part of the world and going like, it's violent, it's scary, it's dark, it's conservative, like I don't understand it. And this is I think it's not everything you need to know. Like you should obviously like go and like read history about Iran too, and about the Iranian Revolution, and understand how all of that happened. But in terms of like a fictional kind of gateway to understanding it, this is a great film to do that. And I would also encourage reading the comics as well. But those are kind of the reasons why I wanted to offer that as something for us to watch and talk about.
Yeah, no, and I think I'm pretty sure I saw this back in 2007. I can't guarantee. I wanted to say, but it definitely resonated with me a lot more now watching it than I would have back then, for sure. And it's actually something I think it's far more effective like this in an animated form than any live action interpretation of it could have been.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, that's one thing I took from it when I was watching. I watched it twice for this. And like there's just something about there's like it gives it more of a universal flavor as an animated film that I think welcomes in to anything, where it could be, if you're doing a live action, I feel like it could get lost in the midst of other films that aren't even like it.
Right.
Try to, like, you could like there's an effectiveness of telling the story of the people that I think something like that has maybe tried sometimes, like you're like let's go to like Homeland on television, fails to get across in the sort of relatability and feeling of empathy towards the group, no matter how hard they try. But in this animated one, I don't know, it was speaks a lot more.
I think the beauty of the animation of this film is because I mean, I don't know how else to put it. There's a lot of dark content happening in this film. Okay, so I think for me, one of the reasons that the animation is perfect for this kind of a story is a lot of what you're saying. I do think that things might get, I don't know how else to say it. I don't think things would hit the same, or maybe be misinterpreted, or not be as impactful, because I think there's a beauty. I mean, this is why, for example, I'm such a fan of anime, because there's messaging, or sorry, there's messages in the storytelling that when you're watching people and real action and for example, in this film, there's a lot of violence.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's death. There's depression. There's a suicide attempt. I mean, there were things that I forgot happened in this movie. I forgot that technically the character, like, almost like I guess from an overdose of pills. Like I forgot all about that. in the fact that she gets so depressed. So these things, I think, just they hit different with the animation. Maybe some of the sadness and the violence hits, it's a softer landing, maybe because it's animated.
Yeah.
I think there's also just something to a lot of the things that she was trying to illustrate come through better with the animation, in terms of like with little Marjan, like the fact that she's or Margie, I guess, when she's a little kid and she's thinking about wanting to be a prophet and she's
Mhm.
having conversations with God. I don't know how that could have been conveyed so well, like in with real actors and maybe at the time of the film with like special effects and those kinds of things.
Well, it's like a comedic aside when that happens. It's kind of the guy, you know, he's I don't know,
Yeah,
he's a comedian, and then the other guy that's up there later on
right.
with him.
But I think maybe, I guess this is as I'm thinking this out loud, this is maybe what I'm realizing, is that yeah, with a lot, when it comes to depicting quote unquote the Middle East, or especially Iran, and the Iranian Revolution, and Islam and all of these things, I think that when you see it in a lot of television shows and in films, no matter maybe like how well intentioned things are, it's tough for people to see and not like get triggered, or not think like, oh well, it's just a violent country, done. Like that's like the viewpoint I'm going to take away from this. I think there's something about it being animated, like I said, that has some of the topics, like they don't hit as hard. Maybe it's also just such a universal way of storytelling that people might enjoy too. But I just think also it's a beautiful film.
Mhm.
I
Oh
think
yeah.
like one of my, even though this wasn't like a great scene, I remember crying listening to her uncle Anush just
Mhm.
talk about his story, about how he wanted basically a better Iran, and then watching, I think it was his own uncle
Yeah.
get murdered, and then him finding his way to Russia. And it's the drawing of the trees and the drawing of the men approaching, and the sense of like all of these like horrible feelings. I don't know how you'd convey that. And I mean, obviously, like there's great actors and there are great directors and there's great cinematography, but that's one aspect. I just don't know how you'd convey it. But the other side of it too is it was based off of a comic.
Yeah.
And I think that for it to stay true to the way that the comic was and presented that way, I love
Mhm.
personally, because like I said, I'm a huge anime fan. I love comics, and it's kind of thinking like I almost think of it as like I love The Walking Dead. I'm obsessed with The Walking Dead. I love the comics, and the show's a great show. It's a great personification of the comics, but for a lot of people, like when if that was like your first introduction to this story, I think that was great for people to get to see it come to life too.
Mhm.
So I kind of feel like it's a two-parter. Like the violence might have been really intense for people to see
Yeah.
actually acted out. So it might be great that it came through in a comic. But the other side of it too is I'm glad that they stayed true to the original story and like the way that it was designed, I guess, to be told.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. And definitely. And one thing with the live action too that I was before we go away from that, like a lot of times the goal whenever uh American production or something sets something to Iran or another
Right.
country, the goal is merely suspense and action. There's no
Right.
let's it's never a drama or we're just visiting or you know, and those things come into play there. It's always
Right.
there, the goal is either covert operation, suspense, get him out of there, something's going, he's
Right.
got the code to this, and it's always with, you know, heightened entertainment and never dramatics.
Honestly, you know what? Maybe, yeah, that's it. I agree. And maybe to even like sum up like my very lengthy explanation before, I think a concern I would have had if this had not been illustrated and had been done as a live action film, I would fear that it would have focused a lot more on the drama of the violence, the
Right.
drama of essentially, yeah, that I don't think is what the focus of this story is. Like that absolutely has to get covered in Persepolis, but at the end of the day, it's about a woman going through life, growing amid all of these obstacles, all of these tragedies. She's processing so much trauma that, as we see, she completely breaks down from it. Learning to love multiple times, and at the end of the day, trying to understand who she is. Because I even like wrote it down. One of the quotes that still gets me in this film, like when I rewatched it recently, I was like, this speaks to me and my entire family, is when her father, when she's a little girl and she's about to leave the airport to go to, I think it's Vienna. I think that's where she went to a French school in Vienna, and it's that her father tells her, don't forget who you are, where you're from. I mean, that encapsulates so much of the film. And then near the end, there's I think there's even a conversation again that she has with like her grandmother about that. It's so interesting, like how this film, even though there's a lot of topics that are being discussed, so much of it really just comes down to she doesn't know who she is a lot of the time, and she's struggling with the fact that she wants to love her country and love where she's from and love her family, but she also doesn't know what that is maybe anymore, because some of it doesn't exist anymore. So I don't think that would have been captured as well especially in 2000, like probably 2006 when it was like in production, in 2007 when it was coming out. No, they would have focused heavily on even like with the well intentions of the person who created the story. I just think at some point that violence and showcasing like the negative aspects of Iran and Islam in terms of like what people think. I should maybe clarify that what the West wants to see Iran as.
And who knows what the casting would have been like on that too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Back then, that would have been.
Well, we have had Antonio Banderas as someone.
Right.
Because this is what happens too. It's it's like it would have. I worry even like with casting, like would it have been an authentic Iranian cast?
Maybe one or in the background, but it would not have.
Right. Would it have been? What would the language have been? Because obviously, like I've watched. I think when I read the comics, obviously it was in English, but when I've watched the film, I've watched it. I think it was initially French.
Yeah, it was French. Yeah, it's French. Like its native is French, and then it got U.S. distribution and redubbed.
Right. And you know what? I actually like debate. I was like, when I was going to rewatch it recently, I was like, do I want to watch it? Because I knew that there was English dubbing, because I found like a link to watch it that way. I ended up just like going, because I think for me, it's like some of the cast, like it's Catherine Deneuve. I was like, yeah, I'm going to like.
She's on both of them, so
both the tracks. Well, then too. Never mind then. I could have watched it there. But I wanted to watch it, I guess, that way, but no, you're right. I really don't even know like how the casting would have been.
Well, Sean Penn as the dad. So
okay, see, that's hilarious.
That's in the voice. I mean, I think in voice acting, I think you could switch anywhere you go. I mean,
I think I'd say like to a degree, because I mean obviously like we have like French actors like do this, so like, but that's also because I think like for reasons like that we even see in the story, like she like went to French schools and things like that and like connected with that culture, I'm assuming. But I mean, I say like to a degree, because it also depends on like what we're talking about. I mean, like there's a reason why people don't want like a white guy voicing Apu on The Simpsons.
Let me preface that as long as you're showing opportunity all around. Then that's fine. Like Star Wars Rebels had like people of color voicing white characters and stuff, so that's
right. No, I get what you're saying. I mean, I will say this. I probably think more so though if this had been cast and this had been in real life.
Oh, in real life. Oh.
I think it would have been messy, and I think it would have focused heavily on violence, and I think so much of this would have been lost. I think there's just something about the animation that also is what makes this an incredible film to watch in terms of Iranian cinema too. Because I mean, even for Iranians who, and I mean, I know that I'm not aware of this myself because my family enjoys this film, but I do think there are probably Iranians who like I mean, like anything, like any nation's gonna have criticism about any film that it's about it. Like some people are gonna love it, some people are gonna hate it. Because I think even when I was looking back at reviews of this film, yeah, there was some backlash for some people thinking like even the aspects of violence that were in it that I didn't think were
Mm-hmm.
too horrible. There are probably some people who didn't enjoy it at all and thought none of it should be in there, but that would have been inauthentic to the story. Like
Right.
she lived through this. Like we have to like talk about some of the
Right.
violence that happened and how that affected her. And yeah, like mentally, emotionally, all of that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the things that would have been lost would have been a lot of the childhood stuff, which is really effective in the film.
Yeah.
That there's, I can't see that uh, being the way it is in this, and they do a really, one of the strengths of this was it really pulls in the idea of a child's interpretation of current events and politics. We only
Yes.
really get it through her, and you get to see, you see your parents talking about stuff, you hear the words, you don't know what they mean, and then you're like, I'm pro this because, you know, my parents, but
Yes.
you have no idea what it is.
Right.
And she's wrapped up in it as a child at the birth of all this, where there's so much to take in. And
Right.
then when at the age where she could understand, she's far away and can't see anything, and it's a really interesting
Yep.
dynamic. And
I loved that because that's honestly I think why my family and I relates to this film and why I think I took away so much of it myself was because I mean that's essentially what happened with my family. I mean a little differently for obvious reasons. It wasn't exactly the same, but like my mother left Iran when she like before like she was 16 essentially, and kind of similar to Margie, she went to school initially, I think like I guess it was yeah middle school or high school. She was I think more probably high school. She went to a Catholic school. I mean she had like nuns that were like teaching her English. She definitely had those experiences where like people were like, oh, like you're Iranian, like at the schools that she was going to. The fact that she was witnessing what was happening in her homeland while in a different country, so like
Mhm.
worried about what's going on in Iran, worried about like how people are viewing her there, worried about like what's my identity here, all of those things. So but I think that's also especially now a pretty universal, like I was saying before, like I think that's a pretty universal feeling a lot of people are dealing with because we have especially in I think in Europe and in the US, you have a lot of people who are leaving the wherever they are initially from and emigrating to different places
Mhm.
and having that trauma of like your homeland, you're bringing that to your new land, you're trying to be successful, like I mean you're trying to just hang out with friends, you want to date, you want to be successful at work, all of these things, but that's in the background, there's trauma in the background. And then there's also the fact that like I say again, like I think a big part of this is like identity
Mhm.
and being okay with who you are and like the struggle of questioning what you are. Because I mean, there are multiple times through this movie where she's like, I mean, she's proud to be Iranian, and then she's like, I don't want to say I'm French. Like I'm
Right.
not Iranian. And then she's like, no, okay, fine, I am proud to be Iranian. I mean, I think there's so many people who deal with that and they're not Iranian at all. I mean, I have friends who are I guess what I'm gonna screw this up because I'm so bad at this, but like I think there are a lot of people that are like me that are children of immigrants essentially. That's
Mhm.
what I was trying to say. Like there are children because I mean like I was born here. I was born in the US.
Mhm.
So I see myself as an American, but I see myself also as an Iranian American. And there's the identity crisis of like, I'm never with Iranians, I'm never Iranian enough. And with Americans, I'm never American enough. And I think a lot of people feel that who are from some kind of a minority, where they're like, you don't feel Mexican enough or Latino enough, or you don't feel Asian enough, like what or wherever you're from, if you're not,
Can I just be
yeah,
me?
yeah, can I just be me? So I think that's also a big reason why I wanted to recommend this film is because while I think it's very important to watch if you want to understand what happened in Iran in like the 80s and the 90s and all of that, it's also a great film if you've been going through those kinds of experiences and those kinds of struggles. because it kind of shows that like a lot of people are going through it, and you're not alone, and there's maybe lessons to learn from that too.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, I even think what's also great about this film is like not everything's answered at the end.
No.
Her. Like I kind of forgot that too. Like it's like in like the last like 20 minutes, she's like getting a separation
Yeah.
from her husband. I was like, what? I forgot all about this. But it's kind of showing that like she's still growing. She's still figuring things
Right.
out. But she's starting to accept more of who she is. Like I love that scene. It's like the eye of the tiger.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, I'm trying to get back on my feet again and figure out who I am. So many people go through that. So many minorities are going through that today.
Mhm.
So I think this is like definitely a worthwhile film. Like if you've ever felt like I don't know where I belong, this is a great movie for you to watch.
There you go. I also think, I mean, watching it this way, like I like the focus on, like I said before, the people, but this could show somebody, like that's scared of people overseas, where just because they associate is
Right.
wars and tyranny and all this stuff. You
Yeah.
say it's not the people. The people don't like this. The people are trapped. Like,
right.
it's governments that have like the wars, is like not
It's like,
the
and also
people.
like extreme versions of things too.
Yeah,
Like
mhm.
extremists, because I mean, because I mean, we are dealing with that here literally right now.
I mean, this film obviously becomes a bit relevant here in the United States to be like, look what this is what you're flirting with here. It's what you.
Man, can't even tell you. It's like these, like, I think when I've been speaking to my mother and people and some people in my family about just the events that are going on here, it's like there were elements of it that are such wild flashbacks to what was going on
Yeah.
right before, during, and after the Islamic Revolution. And I'm sure for people who aren't even Iranian at all, like if there's been turmoil in your country, if there's been government changes in your country that have impacted people, like we're dealing with that right now here in the US. And I think what's fascinating is, yeah, I mean, amongst the people ourselves, a lot of us are just trying to live our life. We just want basic things, like we just want to be paid well, we want to live safe lives, we want our kids to be successful. I mean, I think those are some of the moments that really touched me, are in Persepolis, are moments when Margie's with her grandmother, or with her mother or father, or with her uncle Anoush, and they're very sentimental moments where they just want the best for this little girl.
Right.
And that's super universal. But I think what you're saying too, it's like people hopefully when they watch a film like this, yeah, can see it. For anyone, I mean, specifically for Iran, if you have a preconceived notion of a country, I mean, the tough thing is it's like it's a country that, unfortunately, because of so many things that have happened, it's not an easy country to travel to. So this is your passport. This is your way, this is your way to kind of see some of it. Obviously, it's about a lot of the past, but that's important in understanding how things are right now. But I also think, yeah, it's a great way to just kind of see. I mean, it's one specific story, but it's a story that so many Iranians I know have dealt with. I mean, even if it's like people like me, like I obviously wasn't born there, I obviously did not live during this revolution, I did not go through all of those things, but there are still a lot of like, I mean, that stuff lingers for generations, like the trauma of it. I mean, when I have some family members talk about their time in Iran and like going through these experiences, and not just the revolution, I think what I really appreciate in this film is it also talks about the Iran-Iraq war, which I don't think a lot of people, I mean, if I bring that up to some people, they're like, I didn't even know that existed. Didn't know this even happened. So it's those things that like are going to open your mind to understanding issues over there,
right,
why people are upset about certain things. But at the end of the day, the basic things that people wanted were freedom, wanting to have a voice, wanting to be respected, women having rights. Like these are not wild things. And I also appreciate that the film kind of shows what kind of the I guess the dynamics of Iran were in terms of like culture ahead of everything. Because for example, I have pictures of my family from like the 50s and 60s and early 70s, and there are pictures of like aunties with like the big like 60s like bobs and like the pearls and like the little mini dresses and like cute little like heels and like wedges and stuff, and it's in Iran, and people are like, what? That was there? That happened? And I'm like, yes. People had parties, and people dressed the way they wanted to dress. It's like, it is not. And I think it's wild because when you think of it, so many countries are like that in terms of, and not just like Islamic countries or Arab countries. I mean, there are so many countries that are not the way that they have always been. That should not come as a surprise.
Right.
So like when people look at Iran now, it's like, that is not how it's always been for these people. And not a lot of people enjoy the oppression that's going on. So I think that's why I think this again is a great film, because it helps kind of explore that and show that side of it too, and hopefully opens people's minds a bit to all of that as well.
Yeah, I think this is a key one. Needs to come back up in conversation or be seen or be available.
Yes.
Like the availability of it streaming wasn't, well, I think you can rent it plenty of places, but
right.
Like Canopy, feels like it should be on Canopy, the library streaming app. It'd be perfect for people.
Absolutely.
But it was it was nominated for Best Animated Feature Film at the Academy Awards. It lost to Ratatouille. That year there were only 3 nominees. The other one was Surf's Up.
What? I didn't realize that.
The powerful movie Surf's Up. So
I mean, it's wild that it lost to Ratatouille. But I know we were discussing this ahead of us recording, but it is kind of one of those things where it's like, I understand the power of like Pixar and these things, but it is kind of like, I would just like to watch these 2 in a day.
Right.
watch Persepolis and watch Ratatouille. I mean, I love me some Ratatouille. I even watched the Ratatouille TikTok musical.
Yeah.
I like Ratatouille, but if I were to like say what was a better film in terms of substance,
no doubt, no doubt.
I mean, I understand what Remy go. I know you want to be a chef, but I think this story. But I also I can understand at the time. It's interesting because I do wonder. Well, I don't even have to wonder. I think if it were to happen today, that would not happen. I think if they were to be going against each other, like in this setting that we are.
At least they didn't lose to like Cars, right? It was Ratatouille.
Yeah, that's true.
Ratatouille. Yeah, this, when it comes to these things, the tough one always loses. Like this, I mean, this one has something bold to say. This one challenges you. This one's not. It's very emotional. It's not. It doesn't shy away or paint a brush its problems. So, and at the end of the day, and a lot of times when it's a film from a foreign to the U.S. country, and we know they let their housekeepers and stuff watch them and tell them about it. So that's a thing too. So I think, this one that got recognized, I guess that's the win for it, though. Dare I say, it should have been up for Best Foreign Language Film as well, not just animated. I wanted to go, I'd say adapted screenplay, but that was kind of a stacked year. So it's up against No Country for Old Men, Atonement, Away from Her, Diving Bell, and the Butterfly, and There Will Be Blood. That was a stacked year.
Yeah, that might have been tough.
I'd like to bring up that Away from Her is a terrific film that many people have probably forgotten about by now, but Sarah Polley. It's a really good film. And yeah, that was a stacked year at the Academy Awards, from what I remember. I know we probably only talk about No Country and There Will Be Blood now, but those were all pretty highly touted.
I also didn't even think about this, but so this film, it came out in 2007. Gosh, that's when I graduated high school. That's wild.
Wow. All right. I was 7 years removed from high school at that point.
I'm just thinking that's because I'm actually trying to remember when I actually watched this for the first time. Because I'm also, let me see, because I had this up. I was trying to remember when the comics came out, early 2000s, 2003, 2004, 2005. I remember reading this in high school, but the film, I don't think I saw the film until a while after it came out.
Gotcha. I thought I had I thought I had worked on the Blu-ray when I was in California, but it's a Sony title. I wouldn't have worked on it.
Okay.
And I think I do remember, I think I rented it at my fabled Blockbuster video that was
Oh,
on,
snap.
it was, it was on Sunset, and it was 2 stories. And I remember just, the animation on the cover caught me. I didn't know what it was about. I just rented it because of that.
Right.
But my Blockbuster was, on the same street that Halloween was shot, and that's my favorite movie. So that's why I always drove
Nice.
I drove to the little bit further Blockbuster to
Yeah,
rent
of
because I
course.
could drive by where Michael
Right.
chased Laurie across the street at the end of the movie. So
Obviously.
I would always go to that block. Plus, it was 2 stories, and there was a lot of stuff. But yeah,
Insane
so
to think
that's
of a
where.
blockbuster like that now. I mean, I would still go to one if they existed. It makes me sad.
Yeah. They just Family Video finally called it quits, so all the chain rental stores are officially gone. So now it's just the Ma and Pa's and Collector Hub, which I got to, gosh, it's gonna be 2 years ago this year, but I was in Seattle August of 2019. I got to go to Scarecrow Video, and that place, have you ever been up Seattle?
No, I've always wanted to go.
I
In
fell
general.
in love with Seattle. So if my wife ever wants to relocate, I will go to Seattle in a heartbeat.
Honestly, I would love to. I've always wanted to visit, and because that is literally like I know I live in SoCal, and it's wild that I would say this because of where I live, because it doesn't make any sense. I am about the weather there so much.
Gotcha.
Their weather is where I would like live. I like sunny life and palm trees, but I can only take it so much.
Gotcha. Yeah. Seattle, they have this Scarecrow Video. It's this gigantic store. Like, I took my wife's not into this kind of stuff or whatever, but she was impressed with this place. She was like,
All right.
oh my gosh. So I went in there. I was the biggest tourist in this place.
That's awesome.
And it's great. And they have screenings and stuff of weird stuff. It's my kind of place. But yeah, definitely. I hit that up before I hit up any dispensaries. So that was my first thing off the plane, went to Scarecrow Video. But yeah, Seattle's a really cool city. I like it. And I'm not paid for by the city of Seattle or the state of Washington, but it's a really great city. All right. Do you have anything more to say about Persepolis?
I think I've pretty much said everything. I can't recommend this film enough. It's always like on my list of recs when people are just in general like films to watch. I always think people should watch this because while it's about Iran, like I've said a million times, there's so many universal themes here.
Oh, yeah.
But I also just think it's got such a special place in my heart. One thing I will add that I think of, I know I was talking about all of the relationships that I really loved seeing in this film. Something that is my favorite that literally got me in my feels when I was rewatching it is the relationship with the grandmother.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. It speaks to me so much because I'm gonna get like choked up thinking about it. My grandmother, my Mama June. So for grandparents, I don't know if all Iranians do this, to be honest, because probably everyone's got different nicknames. My grandparents would be my Mama June and my Baba June. Okay. And because June, it's like Jun. It's kind of like a term of like endearment. So like I'd even say like Brandon June. Like if I wanted to say like, oh, like Salam Brandon June, like that's me kind of saying like, hey, you're close with me. Okay. Or like, and so with my grandparents, it's Mama June, Baba June for grandmother and grandfather. So my Mama June means the world to me. She's like probably the most, other than my parents and like my siblings, like the most important person in my family. And I loved seeing this relationship in this film because obviously Marjie's she's close with so many people. Marjan's close with her parents. Like she doesn't have siblings. And her uncle Anush, she loses so early and that impacts her. But it really kind of seems like that grandmother of hers is inspirational for her. I loved how confident her grandmother was. I mean, these are things that I just loved seeing in any film, but especially in an Iranian film of a depiction of just like a confident, passionate, well-rounded, intelligent female who is elderly. And I love, I mean, the details about like how she kept like lavender flower petals in her
yeah,
bra, like
Well,
so adorable.
And at the end of the credits, they go back to that. They quote, or no, is
Yeah.
it our father? I know
It's
they
like
do
a conversation happening.
Okay, yeah.
And it's sweet. And I love that they ended on that, because
Mhm.
that's also one of the saddest things at the end, is when she's like leaving them and she was like, that was the last time I saw my grandmother.
Yeah.
I was crying, because I mean, that's also a universal thing. Like we have, for those of us who are lucky enough, I say, to have like a healthy relationship with our parents or our grandparents, you know, that feeling of like, because that is the elder in your family, that is the matriarch, or if it was your grandfather, the patriarch in your family. And we care about these people so much. And that's our ancestry, that's our lineage. And especially for Iranian families, there's so much, I mean, I would assume this for all families, but like there's definitely in Iranian culture, I mean, there's so much respect and honor that you give to these people. Like my grandmother is so revered in my family. She is the queen. And so I just have to say, like, that was a beautiful relationship. And it's also really beautiful to see that elderly Iranian woman in this family is like, in a lot of ways, like so outgoing, so outspoken, so confident, and is trying to gift bits of wisdom to Marjan, like through her life. And I think that's just super empowering. And I loved that, because I also wonder, like, if we're talking about if it had been in a real life adaptation, like how would that have come through?
Right.
How would those scenes have played out? I'm sure that would have been okay, but I loved the animated sequences of things like that. The final scene, one of the final scenes, where it's like you see the grandmother undressing, and then like the flower petals like start coming down the screen. It's just beautiful, and it's sensitive. But I also think there's something, so maybe that's a good way to describe the grandmother. Like, she is beautiful and delicate and charming in ways, but she's also so fierce. Like, that's a woman you wouldn't want to mess with.
No.
So that's just, I think, great to see in films in general, are those like positive female relationships, and especially when it's that kind of generational thing happening too, where you're seeing someone trying to give knowledge. Like, I mean, she was the elder, trying to give knowledge to the youngest female in this family. And like, even like that, the conversation that they're happening about the separation, and Marjan comes in, she's like, oh, I hate him, it's the worst thing in the world. And the grandmother's like, oh, I thought someone died.
Yeah.
She's
like, you're only mad at yourself for making a bad decision.
Yep.
And that was great advice.
Amazing. No, and maybe that's also something I think that I haven't touched on, is that is very unique in Iranian family. Because divorce or separation, embracing sexuality, because I know the film touches on a lot of that too. Like, there's a scene where I don't know who these women are to Marjan, like when they show up, but like they're like, oh, like you slept with more than one guy. Okay. But like they were excited that she slept with a person, but when she was like, oh, she slept with multiple, now you're a slut. Like, there's so many things in this film. Like, there's layers. It's like an onion, like Shrek.
Onion, ogres have layers. Yeah.
There's layers. So there's layers to this film in terms of how it's hitting on culture too, because I related to that so much. I think Marjan's character, I relate to in so many ways myself. Like, I could see like why this would be a reflection of someone like my mother, but I also see why it's a reflection of like even modern Iranian women like myself too, because we're still dealing with this kind of judgment as well. Like, if I were to get divorced, there are definitely people in my family who'd be like, you're a loser, like you failed, like that's horrible. And like there are probably people who stay in unhappy relationships because of fear of judgment from their family, and like that's a part of the culture. So I just liked that this film kind of broke a lot of that down, and there's a lot of like healthy relationship stuff that's happening, that it's great to see, like the father and the mother being like, yeah, you can come home, we're not going to ask questions. And no one's like asking her or like making her feel shitty for coming home. I mean, I feel like that's a universal thing. Like let's say you went to college, didn't really make it, need to come home and stay in like your parents' house.
Yeah.
we all feel embarrassed with that idea, but like,
Right.
I like that this film like normalized it. So I don't know. Those are kind of some like final thoughts I have, is that I think it's a great film because of the universal themes, but especially for touching on Iranian culture and for women in this culture. It's very uplifting in a lot of ways, because you see a woman who's wanting to embrace a lot of things that would be taboo in her country, but she's like, I don't care. And she had a grandmother who was leading the way. That is very unique and also extremely appreciated for like someone like me to see. And a lot of, I'm sure, I would assume, for other Iranian women to see as well.
Excellent. I'm not going to say anything better than that. So
it's fine.
that's wonderful. I'm not even going to add
I'm
to
glad
it.
that you watched it, is what I'll say, because I think if anything, bringing this film for other people's awareness, I hope that you watch it, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I a lot. I mean, it's going to be in my regular wheelhouse again. Like it's funny. I watched it back then and kind of went away from me, and then you brought it up. I'm like, that's a good pick. I remember that, and I was excited to revisit it, and I was like, yeah,
It's like an underdog,
damn.
right? Because I don't think I even myself might not always remember it, but it's such a good film. And for people who love comics, read the comics. They're
Mhm.
so good too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm really happy with this. So. So now we move on to what else. This is the segment where we just kind of talk about something we've recently taken in, where it's been books, movies, music, something, or maybe something we wrote or produced or put out and want to share. So Sharareh, what else?
I'll bring up something I recently just finished watching, and it was a ride, is The Boys.
Oh yeah, I just finished that recently myself.
Oh my goodness.
Or
That is
caught up. It's not over.
Right. No, exactly. I just watched the first two seasons.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I'm trying, because I couldn't remember, because we just binged whatever was available. So I don't know like how many seasons I was watching. It's a trip. That is a show. And I remember being hesitant on watching it initially, because I don't know how else to say this. Like, the title didn't grab me. And I wasn't, because I think it's a comic, right? Or I'm not sure. I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
So the boys, the title didn't grab me, because I was like, I don't know. This was like, okay, I don't know what this is about. I think I saw like one or two trailers about like superheroes, and I was like, I'm kind of tapped out from like superhero stuff for a minute. My husband's the one who got me into it. He was like, you're gonna want to watch this. It's not what you think it is basically what he kept saying. It's like, It is not the kind of superhero show you think it's gonna be. And I was like, okay. I could not stop watching it.
Yeah.
It is a ride. And I think it's because, just like he described it, not at all what I was expecting from superheroes. And I actually love that. I love how wild this show is. I love how pretty much every episode, my mouth is just like wide open. At the end, like, they actually went there. They actually did it.
Yeah, I thought the show, I described it as, this is either a big troll job on Zack Snyder or what Zack Snyder thinks he makes when he goes and makes a movie, or both.
I can see that. I don't know. It's funny because they were all, I mean, this might be like such a like simplified idea of like why I enjoyed it, but it is kind of one of those things where it's like, I was like feeling I was watching like the reality version of like a behind the scenes of like the Avengers.
Right.
So this is the shit that really goes on.
Yeah. I mean, I had interest in it. Like Carl Urban. I always enjoy his work.
Yeah.
And but like it was another superhero show on a stack of superhero shows, and I was like, I'll get to it. And then I was like, all right, here we go. It's time. I'm like, okay, this was actually, a deconstructive superhero show. Here we go. And it was really good. So
I really enjoy it. I also think what?
I'll eat crow. I was just like, yeah, I'm sure this is fine, but
right.
It was good.
No, I'm glad I watched it. I also think it's I think probably one of my favorite scenes, which might be for a lot of people, is I don't know if can I spoil things? How much can I say or not say?
There's a disclaimer at the top of the show that's not just for the movie we talk about.
Okay. Well, then that being said, it's
Hold on, listener. Skip like the 15-second, 30-second button a couple times.
Yes,
Now
if,
go.
if you're like that worried and sensitive, basically the Stormfront kicking ass scene.
Oh, okay.
That was like basically because they're kicking her ass. She's a Nazi. Her ass needs to get kicked, and it's such a it's a great female empowerment scene.
Yeah.
It's just a great like fight scene, and I just like how all of the guys are kind of like, we just sit on back for a minute, let them handle this.
They got
Perfect.
this.
It was great. But also like
the courtroom scene, that was
that I was kind of my husband and I, it was literally like Clue for a minute. We were like, who's the person who's exploding these heads? Like what the hell? Like we had so many theories about so many aspects of the show. Also, I just love Carl Urban's Billy the Butcher. Like he's like the best. Like that's the reason I kept coming back. I was like, I'm here for Billy. Like that's why I'm here. And also, as horrible as he is, Homelander. I mean, it's you know what it is.
You love to hate him, and that's great. Like people never appreciate that as much.
It's like a Cersei Lannister because it's like it's not like a Joffrey. Like I just can't stand that. Like that's a character where like I would actually skip. I'm like, I literally can't. I want to barf watching this person on screen, even though I know it's like an actor, but like I can't watch the character. But Homelander is like a Cersei where you're kind of like, I'm intrigued by how fucked up this person is. And it's I don't know. For me also, it's like I'm like, so is this like a great antithesis to like a Captain America? I kind of like it. I like how creepy and weird and sadistic this person is. So yeah, it is a great like love to hate. It's like Negan from The Walking Dead for people who like that. It's like this is a fascinating evil person, and I'm into it. But mostly I was there for Billy because
there you go.
He's everything in the show. So I don't. So many of the characters are, but I love him the most.
Excellent. What else? I guess since I haven't been on, I haven't recorded in a couple weeks, but I guess I'll talk Promising Young Woman that just came out. You seen that one?
It's on my list. Okay. Like it's on my list.
Spoil, but it is terrific.
It's a high rec.
It's a high rec. Yeah, it flips things on its head. It goes it just feels, you know what it's doing, but it feels wholly original in its vibe and its motion, and it's really interesting what it pulls off. But I'll also bump down that I'm continuing through my Federico Fellini Criterion set. I've been updating on this. I've watched Juliet of the Spirits, Fellini's Satyricon, and Roma, and not to be confused with the other Roma. But go. Juliet of the Spirits is a trip. I wouldn't. Satyricon's, it's okay. It's got some weird stuff. It's very reminds me of Jodorowsky's stuff. But it would have been Fellini inspiring that. And then Roma's really good. It's just interesting to watch him. He's entering the 1970s in the set. And he's in color now, and his styling's just the way he shoots stuff's getting a little bit more different. But we also, speaking of, we had Mastroianni, his daughter, and his baby mama were voicing the Persepolis.
Yes, obviously. Yeah. Okay. Sorry for me. I thought you were to be like, they were here in my podcast.
And apparently that was by design. I think they wanted those two, Mastroianni, because they had something with Marcello Mastroianni that they wanted a connection to it, and so they had both of them voice.
Oh, that's so cool.
Something like that. But yeah, that ties it up like a bow. So
all right, sweet.
There we go. So
I found a nice roundabout for it. Nice.
There we go. I didn't mean for that to happen, and I just realized it while I was talking. So that'll do it for another week on the Brandon Peters, or another episode. We're still got more this week. The Brandon Peters Show, Sharareh. This has been magnificent, and you're truly one of my favorite Homo sapiens. Thank you for coming back and the wealth of experience that you've shared today, and let people know where they can keep up with you on the
let's see, y'all can keep up with me on the Twitters. It's just going to be at Sharareh Drury. I'm on Instagram at Sharareh Delara. And, I actually just got on TikTok, people. So I'm Sharareh Delara on there too. And it's SHARAREH is the first name. and Delara is Delara. That's actually my middle name, so. But catch me on those. TikTok is going to be probably the weirdest social platform for me yet because I have no idea what I'm doing.
That's the best. That's the best.
Right.
Experimental. Experimental.
Exactly.
Okay, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD. My written work is at whysoblue.com. There's more from the show this week, including the Series 1 finale of Old Space Show for Space 1999 Season 1 on Wednesday. But until then, always remember to keep the positivity in your online film discussion.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.